and welcome in to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. My name is Micah. I am joined, as always, by my fellow host Lino, but unfortunately, our good friend Kalen is dealing with some general soreness, so he is out tonight. He is expected to be available next week, so we're looking forward to having Kalen back, but we will try and do the show justice in his absence. This show, like you can probably tell from the title, will mostly be focused on Team USA and some Summer League observations. But for our loyal listeners, you probably know when it's just me and Lino, we get very Heat centric. Kalen's really the only thing that keeps this from being an entirely Miami Heat based podcast. So we'll try our best to provide some non Heat information, but just know by the end of the show, it will sound like a local sports show. So keep that in mind. But we will start at the top with some news and notes. First and foremost, we have a trade. I'll just kind of get into it because it's weird. So, as it's been rumored for a long time, Russell Westbrook was going to be traded away from the Clippers. And most people thought that was going to be to the Denver Nuggets. Apparently, there was mutual interest there. Today, it was announced he was traded to Utah. Essentially, the Clippers attached a second round pick to move Westbrook to Utah. And they also received Chris Dunn, very good defensive point guard that I like. So, that's cool for the Clippers. And the expectation is, just like with the Laker trades, funny this has happened twice now, Westbrook will be bought out by the Jazz and then be able to sign, I assume, a veteran's minimum with the Nuggets. So Russ is headed to Denver. The two triple-double kings of this generation are going to be playing together. I'm interested in it. I will be honest and say I did not realize statistically how rough of a season Westbrook had last year. I thought, oh, this is a fun like bench upgrade. And it probably still is, like Russ versus Reggie Jackson. I mean, you lose shooting, but I'm fine with going with Russ there. And rebounding is great. He'll push the tempo. Maybe they can play through him in second units. They don't have a ton of creation on this roster, but if you look at Russ as like cleaning the glass basketball sports page, like their percentages they do in a color range, and blue is bad for your percentile, and his whole page was blue last year. So he's no longer an efficient scorer, unfortunately. But Lino, I want to know your thoughts on this one. You and I both love Russ, and he's just at a stage of his career where he can give teams what he can. But what do you think of this fit in Denver?
Yeah, man, it's a good situation of good, bad, and ugly here. I think maybe a little bit more ugly than good, but I'm interested in it. I think there are certain things that Russ still brings to the table as far as athleticism, speed on the ball, and while rim pressure usually requires you make a lot of shots pretty efficiently at the rim, there's still a level of you have to have someone guarding the rim when Russ is in the game, or else he is going to attack it. And that's something that still bends defenses to a degree, and Russ still does a good job of moving the ball around. So as a secondary ball handler in that second unit, in an actual role player situation, I do think if there were any environment where Russ can really shine, it would be one similar to this in a bit of a smaller market on a team where it's obvious that he's not coming in to be the star, and obvious that he's not necessarily needed in that way. I think this is going to work out, or it can work out through that. And who knows, maybe his shot can just come back one day. It's been gone for a long time, and there's a chance it doesn't ever come back. But if there were ever a time for things to start working out for Russell Westbrook, I hope it's right now.
Totally agree. Yeah, definitely rooting for it to work. I think like the contrasting styles between him and Jokic could be a lot of fun to watch on the court
Mhm.
together. So, another interesting pickup for a contender was Gary Trent Jr., who was one of the better free agents left. He signed with Milwaukee. It sounds like it's a 1-year veterans minimum deal. Fun fact for anybody that doesn't know, if Woj or Shams reports a 1-year deal and they don't say the number, that usually means it was a minimum. But this was an interesting one for me because Gary Trent's like solid. He's not like me, probably not even like a non-taxpayer mid-level guy, like not 12 or 13 million dollars, but he's definitely better than the minimum. To me, it feels very similar to Kelly Oubre last summer, where just like the need for him kind of dried up. So he was like, well, I'll sign with a good team in Philadelphia, re-up my value and then get back on the market next summer. And that worked out for him. I think he signed to something like $8 million a year or something
Yeah.
this summer. So that's a good move, I think, for Gary Trent. Him, Damian Lillard have a good relationship. Apparently, Dame's been recruiting a lot of guys to try and sign the minimum with Milwaukee. He talked to
It's been
Haywood
working.
Highsmith, before he signed with the Heat, which I'm like, Dame, could have played with Haywood if you would have played your hand a little better last summer. But again, don't want to get too Heat centric. But yeah, I like this pickup from Milwaukee. To me, Gary Trent can be hopefully a better version of what Malik Beasley was last year. A knockdown
Mhm.
shooter. He can, create some turnovers. Definitely like an event creator on defense. That got a lot better in Toronto. So I think he can help them, and he'll probably be their starting two guard, I would think, along. See, what would their starting lineup be? I guess it would be Dame, Gary Trent Jr., Middleton, Giannis, Lopez would probably be my guess. They might start bigger with Portis and have Gary Trent off the bench, but regardless, that's to be this late in the offseason, like most of free
Mhm.
agency's dried up. I thought it was a pretty nice pickup.
Yeah, I like it.
And then to move on to our last little bit of news, it's like I would categorize this as maybe slightly concerning. Chris Middleton and Kyrie Irving both have had off-season surgeries. Middleton had surgery on both ankles. I guess it was like a cleanup procedure. He's definitely been riddled with injuries the last few seasons, really since that Bucks title run. So it's crucial for him to be healthy for them. And we saw in that Indiana series, like when it was just him, Dame and Giannis were out, he can still be a nightmare to deal with when he's hot. So hopefully he can stay healthy for Milwaukee. And the other one that sounds even more serious was Kyrie Irving. Apparently earlier this month suffered a broken left hand in some kind of off-season training workout. He's already gone under surgery. I haven't read to this point if there's like fear it will impact his availability for the start of the season, but hopefully everything will be good at that point, because you never want to see a guy get injured in the off season and it really costs him any significant time in the regular season. So that'll kind of wrap up the news and notes. And now if you hear this sound, it's time to talk some USA
Time to
basketball,
stand
baby.
up next to you.
Since we last spoke to you guys, the USA had some pretty impressive performances and wins over Australia and Serbia. To start with the Australian game, I think the standout for me would probably be Devin Booker and once again Anthony Davis.
Mhm.
AD, just awesome offense and defense, great rim protection, great rebounding, just a force inside. And then Devin Booker, just another example of how deep this roster is. Like he just had it going, so he took a few extra shots and got to an efficient, I think 16 or 17 points. Again, just kind of highlighting how easily this US roster can really pick apart teams. And then the
Mhm.
second game was the Australia matchup, that was the first game was the Australia matchup, which I should note was a 6 point game in the fourth quarter. So it wasn't like a runaway, but that felt more related to Team USA turnovers than it did
Yeah.
to Australia playing excellent. Jock Lindell, Dyson Daniels, Josh Giddey all had solid performances, but didn't really feel like the US was kind of in danger there. And then the
Mhm.
win over Serbia, like the first quarter, I think it was 28-28. Serbia was hitting a lot of threes. I just was like grinning ear to ear because it's just such high level competition. Teams were playing hard. But the US, once that second unit comes in, they really just establish dominance. Bam and AD together, such a nightmare defensively. And in this game, Bam was like, "Oh, I can play the four because I can just shoot 60% from three." And he decides to go 3 of 5 from deep, hit some other mid range jumpers. Overall, just a very exciting game from Bam. So, Lino, I wanted to throw it to you on Bam or any other USA takeaways specifically, but what were you thinking of his most recent performance?
Bam, obviously, so excited about. I love the love that he's getting online from just NBA media in general, from his teammates on the Team USA, unit. It's honestly, if anything is disappointing, is that I feel like maybe I just haven't seen it. I don't really follow our Heat guys as far as our players, but I have not really seen a lot of posts from any of our guys about what Bam's doing right now. And not that that super matters, but it's just crazy to watch him really shine amongst these obvious Hall of Famers and superstars that he's playing with. And so that's been incredible to watch happen. Overall, with Team USA, I do just think that we have built maybe one of the best teams we've put together in a long time. This is truly an incredible team with little to no flaws. While there are probably some flaws maybe in some of the lineups, and we'll probably get into that next, but it is definitely one of those situations where we have such an elite talent in every aspect of basketball. Like, if there's a certain way you've built your team to eliminate a certain elite talent, we have whatever counter that is, or whatever, other style of play we can just convert to and revert to whenever we need to. And so it's just been awesome to watch. And it's been cool to see just the minutes that get shared out right now. Like, there's a couple guys who do 20 minutes a game. I think one of our players was at 24 minutes a game the other day. No, nobody actually was over 21 minutes. And Steph Curry was the person with the most minutes at 21. But all of our bench players play 16 to 18 minutes. And so it's like, this is really not a starter and a bench lineup. It's just kind of starting lineup 1 and 2. Like, they just kind of
Mhm.
all play a pretty equal amount of minutes, and thus I have not been too concerned about the different lineups we might put out there, just because the lineups that are working are really, really working, and I'd hate to mess that up just to be winning in the first quarter rather than the fourth quarter. But yeah, what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I think the most popular criticism right now is probably related to Embiid. Embiid
Hmm.
hasn't looked awesome in these FIBA games. I don't know if it's the officiating or just kind of trying to fit into a more talented roster where he's not necessarily the focal point. But I think because he's struggled and because Bam and AD have looked so great, a lot of people have called for one of those two, usually AD, to be inserted into the starting lineup. So much so that I think Steve Kerr has actually asked about it recently. I saw a quote from him, and the way he said it, it basically sounded like Steph, LeBron, and Embiid are in pen, and everybody else is in pencil. And that is kind of reflected in these games. We've seen
Hmm.
Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker, Drew Holiday, amongst a couple, and Jason Tatum, all either start or come off the bench. So they're kind of mixing and matching what they want there. I would think Kevin Durant would also get a spot, but right now he's still out with that calf injury. So we'll
Hmm.
see if he's actually able to come back in time. But yeah, it was just, like you were saying, it's to me, I just think this team is so interesting. It's fun to talk about optimizing it. It's like, how
Hmm.
could this possibly be the best version of itself? But when you, Kaylin, and I are ever texting about it, I feel like we always come back to the same thing. Or it's like, well, they're gonna win. If they start the
How
worst
do we
lineup,
win by 700 points, actually?
right? Let's okay. So just for a fun thought exercise, what would be the worst lineup they could put out there?
The worst lineup they could put out there is probably Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid, Micah Potter, Langston Galloway, and Nigel Hayes Davis.
Not the for
Uh, sorry. Shout out to Micah Potter, though, for shooting the lights out.
he legend.
Yeah, but I would probably say those two. Honestly, the worst lineup we could put out there is Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid, LeBron James, Steph Curry, and Drew Holiday.
The lineup that started.
Yes, like that's probably the
This
most
is the
inefficient
floor.
version. Like, this is probably the most inefficient version of like Team USA, and
Mhm.
even still, like, can score and outscore teams in ways that seem insurmountable. But it's not the optimized version of this team. It's actually like optically optimized. Like, it's the most respectful way to present the starting lineup for Team USA is putting those names first and then letting the guys off the bench come off the bench. But
Right. Yeah, I'm,
that's just
like,
how
writing down different combinations. I think as far as, like, fit, weaknesses, I think the worst lineup you could come up with would be, like, Halliburton, Derek
Mhm.
White, Booker, Holiday, Embiid, and that still feels
Embiid.
like a gold medal team.
Honestly, I would probably put Tatum in there instead of Halliburton and feel the same. I was trying to think of like which version would the ball stick so much that we
True.
actually gets in the way. And so I was like, if we put too many hoopers out there at one time,
That's true,
um,
too many tween hezzy guys.
yeah, because at least
Yeah.
Halliburton is going to get that ball to all those guys on the floor, and it could probably turn out being pretty efficient.
That's the thing, that lineup's sick. Like, that that lineup would beat the all-star team, like,
Yeah,
it's incredible, so, just wanted to do that to highlight, like, we're having fun, there's, only so much professional basketball available to us at this moment, so we're just enjoying where we can. So something fun to think about. A couple other notes I just wanted to kind of reflect on as far as what's been going on with Team USA. Uh, One thing I kind of alluded to earlier with Devin Booker's performance against Australia was also highlighted by Steph Curry's performance against Serbia, which Steph just went nuts. And the rest of the team was like, okay, cool. Steph has it going. Like he and LeBron ran several pick and rolls that were very effective, as you would expect. But there's just I think the versatility of Team USA is its greatest strength. Lino, you were alluding to this earlier. They can shapeshift to whatever they need, but especially offensively, they kind of just it. I think just in observing it, it seems like they're kind of like, well, we're just going to go out there and just kind of see who gets cooking first.
Mhm.
And some nights where no one is, guys like Anthony Edwards are really valuable because he'll kind of just initiate his own shot. He's not as worried about trying to play like in the flow of the offense. And then guys like AD and Bam with rebounding and stuff are really important too. But that's just been interesting to watch. And I think as a fan of Team USA, especially like their next game is against South Sudan, which is one of the weaker teams in the tournament. An awesome story, and definitely huge credit to them for making the Olympics. But they are one of the weaker teams in terms of actual talent. So for that game, I'm not really looking at like, okay, what are we going to do schematically? It's more just like a roulette wheel of like, ooh, who might get to 25 points this game in 18 minutes? It's like it's just fun to see who kind of thrives in different matchups. And Curry
Yeah.
had a rough game against Australia. So I do think he was like really wanting to come out and have a good performance against Serbia, which because I think this is Steph's first Olympics, I believe. He's played in the FIBA World Cup, but I
Mhm.
think he wants to prove like, I can do
Yeah.
this. And
And he's, like,
it
undefeated in the FIBA stuff too, so, I think he
yeah.
wants to continue that and be like, "I wanna show that I'm the world basketball player."
Yeah.
Uh, Another thing I wanted to note on as far as just things that stood out to me, one thing I love about this team is obviously there's an immense amount of talent, superstar talent, but there's just something so satisfying about seeing this superstar talent do role player things, like watching LeBron James cut do a
Mhm.
baseline cut, like,
Yeah.
take a lob, like, any watching Steph Curry do these things, watching Joel Embiid set, a pin down screen for Steph Curry, like,
Mhm.
those things are crazy to watch because those things are so important for when you put all this talent in one room. Like, we've seen renditions of this team where that superstar level, that talent gets in the way of actually playing team basketball, and that's just not the case, and I think maybe because we kind of have that insight into their practices, we got them all mic'd up, like, maybe we just know these things more than we've ever known them before, but this team is so obviously bought into doing all the right things on every level of the game that it's just beautiful to watch happen. And so none of these guys took more than 10 shots except for Anthony Edwards and Steph Curry. Like it just none of these guys are going to come out here trying to score 40 because they just know they don't have to. It's like as long as everybody does their role the right way in the position they play, any of us can really pop off, but we can also just make sure we win every single game by being unstoppable. So it's been cool to watch, especially with people like LeBron James and Steph Curry, guys who really, if they decided to play that way, no one could fault them because they're the best players in the world. And they've chosen consciously not to do so.
Yeah, I totally agree. My favorite moment that highlighted that was I believe Steph was trapped on a pick and roll with Bam. So Bam caught it on the short roll and he turns to survey the court. And it's like, okay, I can throw the lob to LeBron. I can hit, I forget who it was, maybe
There's Drew
Tatum with a
Holiday
yeah,
down
with a
there.
skip pass. Like it's just like so cool that there's just this talent that's being used in an organic way. All-star games usually just turn into like get different guys taking turns, isolating
Mhm.
and taking a step back. So to see real team basketball being played with this amount of talent, it's just amazing to see. And something I do think we could look at maybe down the road. I don't want to get like too arrogant. The US could lose, but something that would be fun is if you took like an Olympic all-star team, like all the countries combined, like the field versus the US. I wonder how close you could kind of get to a competitive game. I think probably pretty close. But like Slovenia didn't qualify. Like having Luca, somebody like that would be huge for Team World, if you want to call them that. But I think it would be fun to kind of evaluate where they would stand. But the depth of Team USA is just crazy. Like Jokic got pulled early in this game
Yeah.
and he still had like 25 plus minutes, maybe even 26, something like that. But it was like, man, I felt like he didn't even play that much and he still played more than I think any player on Team USA. And it's just, and that makes sense. Like other countries just have to lean more on their guys that are stars, but it
Mhm.
does speak to just how devastating the US's offense is and their
Yeah, I
depth.
think it's really just a matter of there's probably not enough amazing basketball players in the world to match up with the depth that we have right now. So even if you
Yeah.
built like a team world, I just don't see it
Yeah.
going
It would be
away.
fun to do. I would love to see that. Like, if they've talked about revamping All Star Weekend, like if they tried to do
Mhm.
something like that, like
Yeah.
if they even just took like last year's Olympics team, like this one we're talking about now for the upcoming All Star break, if they did that
Mhm.
versus Luca, and like I mean, if you really get into it, like you could put together, like you could use Canada's backcourt, like Shea, Jamal Murray, Luca,
Yeah.
Jokic, Giannis, like that would be crazy. And then you got to fill out the bench, but it would definitely get interesting. But one of the biggest advantages, the non-US teams have is they play together a lot more. So if you
Mhm.
take that away, I'm not sure how it would kind of come out in the wash. But I wanted to ask you, the officiating in FIBA has been something personally I've really enjoyed. I really enjoy the physicality. I don't love how strict they are on like violations, like traveling and stuff. They're a lot more strict on, which is like good to a degree. I think emphasizing fundamentals is good, especially for younger players watching, because they're going to want to emulate their favorite players. But the increased physicality, I wanted to ask you about that. If have you seen certain guys, you know, have a hard time adjusting to that, and just FIBA rules in general? What have you thought?
Yeah, I mean, I think the elephant in the room is that Embiid is not going to be able to be the foul merchant that he typically is in the NBA, which is, that happens. I don't shame him for that. That works in the NBA, so he should do it. It's just not going to work there. But on the flip side, what I love about the FIBA rules is that, I think a lot of international players talk about the NBA and how it's easier to play because of how the officiating is. It makes defenses easier to score against. And I think some people take that as international players feel like the NBA players aren't as good at defense. What I do like about this, one, I don't think that's what they're trying to say, but two, I love that we kind of get to benefit from the FIBA rules too. Like Bam, AD, our defense gets to play very, very physically in ways that they can't really get away with in the NBA. And I think they shine in that. And I see that we really dominate other teams because, we would shine in those kind of roles too, and or with those kind of rules too. And so that's been my main takeaway. The offensive stuff is like, I think it makes sense. I like that the refs don't call those plays where players are obviously just looking for a foul rather than looking to score. And so, but I'd be curious for guys like, I wish Jimmy Butler would play in the Olympics. I wish he cared because there are certain guys who do get to the foul line a lot, but I feel genuinely are looking at angles to score and get a lot of and one buckets. And I'd be curious if they'd still get those same things. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. There's definitely different kinds of foul drawing. Even guys that are like Jimmy that are trying to get fouls, it's different to me when they read someone's being out of position and they're like, okay, I'm going to make sure I get this contact and then try and finish the layup, which does get Jimmy in trouble sometimes. But I feel like Jimmy, prime James Harden, he had the tricks, but he also was just so strong and so explosive. Like he could put guys in really compromised positions. So I love the officiating. I'm not like a huge Embiid fan. He's obviously a super talented player, but being a fan of an Eastern Conference team, the way he's officiated is so frustrating. So to see him, do these like swipe up, swipe throughs to try and get cheap fouls when he probably had a good look already, and then those not get called has been really enjoyable. So I would like,
It's like watching a sitcom without the laugh track. It's like
yes, that's a
it's
great
really, really
metaphor.
awkward.
Yeah, it's Embiid's phantom limb. He's just like, "Wait, where's the goal?" And then everybody's just running the other way. So I mean, I don't know how much of it would ever come to the NBA. I think it would take the league really empowering officials to call those things. But as a fan, it doesn't seem that difficult. I think about this with football a lot. Obviously, a contact sport, so very different. But to me, American football, the refs like they don't go for flopping as much because they just kind of call a spade, and they're pretty
Yeah.
confident in what it looks like when a guy actually is being held, or actually gets jammed up 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, whatever the call may be. And I think that would benefit NBA refs so much because that NBA play I referenced, like he tried to swipe up into Jokic's body, and the ref was like, "That's not a normal basketball movement." Like the same thing with hooking guys' arms. Like
Mhm.
if you go to pick up and somebody try that, people be like, What are you doing?" Like
Will you
I
stop being weird?
yeah, it's just like just play. Like, and Mark Cuban, who I'm not saying is, the person to go to on all issues, but several years ago said officiating should try and make professional basketball as similar to pickup as possible. And I do get that sentiment in this where it's like there's kind of like a code of honor in pickup where it's like if you do something kind of like cheap or crazy, it's like, dude, come on. Like we're all out here just trying to have fun. Like you don't have to do like the low pickup swipe through hook arms. Like just play. Just if you can't score, you can't score, but we don't need all this other stuff. So and I will say just for anyone listening at home, I am a big flopper. In any kind of like officiated basketball, I definitely take advantage of like these refs are just getting like some extra money on the weekend. So I do like the yelling, the swipe through. So I'm not saying I don't do it. I just wish the professionals would be officiated a little more strongly, but I do want to be clear about that. Now at pickup, I don't because at pickup you just get yelled at. There's no point. But if there are refs, I do get a little wicked with it. I won't
Thank
lie.
you for that moment of honesty.
Yeah, because I could hear my friends being like, "Why are you on the floor so much at pickup?" Like when I was younger, dude, I like if I couldn't like really attack my matchup, I was like, "Well, I'm going into your body, and you're gonna have to make a choice, and we're both gonna end up on the ground, but one of us is going to the free throw line,
Hey,
so it's gonna
Safi
be
taught me
me."
this one. He taught me this one philosophy when we were playing pickup a lot in college. He was like, "Look, you're driving to the basket. You don't think you can really get over it without getting blocked. Either go to space or go to war. Throw that thing up high or crash right into that dude's
Yep.
body and hope you get fouled."
That's a great point. That's a great point. So, yeah, I do hope the NBA can adopt some of the stronger officiating, and I feel like at least pretty unanimously on my timeline and stuff, fans have enjoyed it. I don't think anybody's like, "Oh, I wish Embiid was getting more free throws." So I do think that's something the NBA could take into consideration, but we'll see going forward. It was definitely like more strictly enforced. I want to say like the second half of last season, so maybe that'll continue going into
Mhm.
next year. Lino, did you have any other Team USA thoughts? I was going to give like a little preview about what's going forward, but anything else you really wanted to hit on?
Really, the only thing that would be interesting looking forward is if KD is going to play and what that means for this lineup. I
Mm-hmm.
always get this really bad feeling, and I should probably knock on wood, but when the team is doing super well while a guy's injured,
Mm-hmm.
there's just always this thought in the back of my head, no matter how good that player is, that it's going to mess it up when that person has to come back because they
Mm-hmm.
have to do things differently. And to do things differently always feels like it sounds like you're going to do things worse, which is probably
Mm-hmm.
not the case because it's Kevin Durant and he's amazing and he can do pretty much everything anybody else on the floor can do. And it's probably not a problem. But there's a small voice in my head that says Katie comes in there and things just get weird with
Yeah,
minutes, with rotations, with lineups, and things like that. So we'll see what happens. I definitely want to see what happens, but we'll hope for the best.
there you go. Yeah, they have another game this coming Saturday against South Sudan. Like we referenced, that one probably won't be particularly close, but that is a opponent that they'll face in the group stage, so you can at least get a little preview of that. Then they have one more exhibition against Germany, with defending FIBA World Champions, I believe. So that is definitely one that'll be interesting to watch. They have Wagner brothers, Schroeder. They have a very solid team. And then it's the Olympics. We start with group play. I believe the first game's against Serbia, and I think that's on July 28th. So depending on the time you're listening to this, just over a week away from like real Olympics starting. So that'll be a lot of fun. We talked about it earlier. I really hope we get that France matchup at some point during the Olympics to see Wemby and Gobert take on this team. But with that being said, we can kind of transition to Summer League. Summer League in Las Vegas. Leon and I were not able to go this year. We had a wonderful time last year. Plan on going again very soon. So we have had to watch from the couch, but there's still been a lot of exciting basketball going on. Not to start on a negative note, but I do just want to say, because some listeners might be dealing with this as well. The NBA made it this year to where you can't watch Summer League games on League Pass until after Summer League concludes, which is
Yeah,
it's why? Like, what? They're not replaying on ESPNU. Like, just let us watch these games. Like, I saw it on Twitter pretty early on, so I could like kind of DVR the ones I really wanted to check out. But just like when you have an extra hour, being like, oh, I want to see what Donovan Clingan look like, or whatever it might be. It's just so frustrating that it's like, nope, you got to wait till this whole thing's over. And like, sure, we have all summer to look at it, I guess, but it's topical. You want to keep up with it, and there's no way to watch all those games. So that is something I hope they remedy in the future. But with the negative things aside, Lino, I want to throw it to you first, just on what you've been seeing out there, and maybe somebody that's kind of struck you as really playing well so far.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the Heat team that we've obviously been tracking pretty closely, the other player I've been keeping up with and the team I've been keeping up with is the San Antonio Spurs and Stephon Castle. I thought that draft pick was super interesting, especially when you combine the fact that they traded away Rob Dillingham with their other first round pick. I thought that came under a bit of scrutiny, and I just wanted to kind of see how that was going to play out for them, at least in the immediate future. And I think they did a really good job. I think he's played super well. I believe in the California Open, I think he averaged 15 points and 4 assists. In Las Vegas, he averaged 22 points and 4 assists. He just surprised me with the fact that he does play like a genuine, legitimate, traditional point guard. He has an incredible physicality to him and an incredible patience in the pick and roll. Like, if you watch him in the pick and roll, he has honestly very Chris Paul like tendencies as far as snaking around guys, getting people on his hip, making the right pass, one handed, offhand dribble pass or bounce passes in between players to the center, lobs, things of that nature. That's the exact skill set they needed to put next to somebody like Wemby. I just was expecting it to come from a different type of player. I was talking to a friend of mine, Noah, who was talking about how he was concerned initially just because Castle played point guard in high school but didn't play point guard in college, and it wasn't that much of a time gap in between those two situations, obviously, before he got drafted. But he was curious as to how that would actually play out, and I think it played out really well. Those skills are definitely still there. He's got some work to do when it comes to scoring and making shots, but it doesn't look terrible. And scoring in the summer league is an incredibly small sample size. We've seen plenty of players do a poor job of shooting in the summer league and come out and be just fine. So yeah, I mean, it's just summer league, but as far as positive as things can look, it's pretty high right now with that pick, and I think they are set up for a really nice future. What about you?
Yeah, I think you made a lot of great points, and I've really been thinking about the Castle pick in terms of roster construction and how that'll fit with the Spurs. And I think when they initially made the pick, I was like, man, you want like shooters around Wimby because you could play five out. But you could argue the opposite way, which is you have maybe the best, actually, I think you can safely say the best defensive prospect ever. So why not surround him with five elite defenders and then see where you can get the offense from there? And that does seem to be the approach they're taking. So I like what you were saying. I haven't gotten to see a lot of the Spurs. So I definitely, once this purgatory we're stuck in with League Pass subsides, then I'll be excited to check out some of what's been going on with Castle. But I'm glad to hear he's looking good. Somebody also, a Texas rookie that I've been super impressed with is Reed Shepherd. Reed
Mhm.
Shepherd is a prospect I really liked, but he to me was so interesting because I didn't have a great comp for him. Van Fleet was like kind of the number one comp you would see, but Reed, he's like 6'1", he's fairly small, but can shoot incredibly well, like very talented A+ tier level shooter, and on top of that has incredible hands despite like not the best wingspan. So I was just curious to see how that would translate, obviously in the actual NBA, but even in summer league, just against pros, how it would look. And boy, does it look good! Reed Shepherd is nice, man. He is a
Oh yeah.
good ball player. So obviously the shooting jumps off the page, like the pull-ups there, mid-range, three-pointers, deep range, looks incredible. But the feel is so impressive. He doesn't have the uh, most wide array of passes at his disposal, but can definitely make the right read. Definitely knows what reads not to go for. He might be, he could be a little more aggressive potentially with his passing, but I've really liked his feel. And I'd say a similar thing about his ball handling. He doesn't have the flashiest handle. Obviously, his teammate Rob Dillingham definitely has that title in this draft class. But Reed's handle, I think, is very functional. He can run a good pick and roll. He's got a good push cross. He knows how to reject the screen, get downhill. And then he's got such great touch. You just project that floater is going to be a nasty weapon. The pull-ups there. But on defense is where I've been just so impressed because he
Oh
heats
yeah.
up the ball. And I mean, the game I watched most recently, he had 5 steals. And I think that could be a
Dang.
very normal occurrence for him, 4 or 5 stocks a game because he just, it's very, and not to reference Chris Paul again, but I have it in my notes. It's very Chris Paul like. It's like, how does this? He just gets his hand on the ball. I remember when I used to watch Chris Paul in New Orleans, I would always think like, how are all his fingers not broken? Like it just he's always jamming his hand in there and coming away with it. But I don't know. It's just like an extra sense these guys have, and probably also like incredibly strong hands or something. But
Mhm.
Reed, he's been very impressive to me. And Houston in general, like Cam Whitmore has looked good. I believe it was the Dunker Spot noted. I think Nikias said he's up to 4 assists a game this summer league, which like for Cam
Moving the
Whitmore,
ball.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy. So that's Caitlin Clark numbers for Cam
And
Whitmore.
is Cam Whitmore the Caitlin Clark of the NBA? Syndicate that one. That does bring up a good point that I did want to talk about. I don't know if we have it in our show notes, but I just want to say there's some second year players that really showed up and I think are going to be very interesting to watch next year. Obviously, we have our very own Jaime Jaquez Jr. looked incredible out there. We'll get into detail with that later. But we also had guys like Julian Strother came out and I think shot 46% from three, looked really solid out there. Jake LaRavia put together some really good games. Actually, no, that was Jarris Walker who I think had those threes. But Julian Strother led the summer league in points so far with 28.5 points per
Mhm,
game. Like he just looks solid. Those guys just look like they know what they're doing and
mhm,
that they probably don't need to be here. There's probably some players who, some second and third year players who look like they definitely still need to be here and probably are on their last shot. But I just wanted to take that time to really celebrate guys who, probably came in, had summer league last year and, impressed, didn't impress, but came back this year and showed that they learned so much by being in the NBA for one full season.
Well said. I think one thing I see a lot of smart draft people say, or just guys that follow the NBA in general, is the two things that really matter in summer league. Because obviously, a lot of people say like nothing matters in summer league, but two things to really watch out for are rookies dominating because this is a level up in competition, and if they're still just rolling, that's a great sign. But the second thing that can be real is sophomore and third year players struggling. And
Hmm.
to me, it's like, we're seeing, we saw, I believe it was Jabari Smith last year, have a really great summer league and went on to have a good season. It doesn't mean this person's going to be an all-star because they're averaging 25 a game in their second season in summer league. But to me, it is like a check box. It's like, okay, this guy looks like a grown man amongst boys, which he technically is. Perfect. Let's keep moving. But the guys that struggle in their second year, it's like, oh man,
Hmm.
that's tough, which we don't need to call out a lot of those because that could get negative. But another quick shout out I had was a guy we both like a lot, and that's Dylan Jones from Oklahoma City.
Oh yeah.
Just a good ball player, man. Like just knows how to get downhill, knows how to attack
Those
the
ball.
basket. He can score really well around the basket. The shooting, the 3-pointer, that'll be what determines it. I think he ended up like 32% in college. He's shooting really poorly right now. I think he's like at 20% or something from three so far in summer league. And he's an
Mhm.
on-ball guy, so he will need to develop that. So if he ever has aspirations of playing a significant role, he'll have to be off-ball with Shea, with J-Dub. But you can just tell some guys are just they know how to
Yeah.
hoop, and he's really solid. So, did you have any other non-Heat guys before we totally steer
Yeah,
this
man.
into the Heat?
Look, we got to talk about a certain NBA player's son, a junior. And that player is Scottie Pippen Jr., baby. 3.7 steals per game, looking
Mhm.
like a real adult out there, playing some really solid basketball for the Utah Jazz. What a great pickup, and what a good player. Just as good as we thought he'd be, just as good as we've been talking about for the past year. This specific son of an NBA Hall of Famer. And yeah, just was really impressed with him and didn't even know he was in this draft class. I just happened to be watching a random Jazz Grizzlies game, which is another segue into that. I did not get to see nearly as much Zach Edey as I wanted this summer league, but that is okay. I saw enough, and I know he's going to dominate. So shout out to Zach Edey, my precious son.
Yeah, well said. I also like I know what you're alluding to, and I do think we have to talk about it because it's just everywhere. But there is a son playing in summer league, and a lot of people think it's like a charity case or whatever. But Karan Butler's son on the Heat summer league team has really shown some defensive prowess.
Oh my gosh. I didn't even know he was on there.
Karan Butler posted that on Instagram the other day. It was his son in like a Heat G League uniform standing beside Bronny from when the Heat and Lakers played. And I was like, I didn't know he was
Incredible.
playing. That's cool. So, but in all seriousness, if you guys want Bronny James content, go somewhere else. Leave that kid alone. He's a 55th pick. So yeah,
Oh
speaking
man.
of leaving well enough alone, we sure can't because it's time to talk about I think the greatest summer league team ever assembled, the
I think
undefeated
maybe the greatest
Miami
team
Heat.
ever.
Yeah, it could be better than this Olympic team. I don't think LeBron James could score on Keyshawn Johnson, so I'd like to see him try. But
I'd like to see him try. It's crazy. You just signed Kashawn Johnson's death note. What the hell? Oh man.
let's start with Keyshawn because this guy, and he said it in interviews, he was made in the Heat culture hyperbolic chamber. Like
Mhm.
he is long, athletic, very competitive, can shoot enough to stay on the court on offense, and just gets after it. Like just you can see like he has a big dunk and he'll snarl and flex, but he gets a stop, he gets a steal, forces a 24-second violation. He's pumping his chest, he's screaming at his bench, the other team's bench. Like this guy to me has been the standout so far, just in terms of relative to expectations. Because I mean, I just thought, okay, this guy's kind of athletic. That'll be cool to see. He is playing super well. He's also knocking down threes at a solid
Mhm.
clip. He hasn't taken a ton, but to me, the form looks solid. And I think PJ Tucker is the player you'll really want to kind of frame him as far as an NBA role, just like a top tier level defender that can shoot just enough to stay on the court. And we saw PJ Tucker have an awesome year for the Heat. He's able to do like some more like post hub playmaking stuff. So if there's any organization that can emphasize someone like this, I think it's the Heat. But Lino, what have you thought from Kashad Johnson so far?
I think PJ Tucker is the floor for Keyshawn
Yes.
Johnson. I
Let's talk
texted you.
Andre Iguodala.
I texted you at 2 in the morning the other day, and I told you that Keyshawn Johnson is the Compton Giannis Antetokounmpo because that is the truth, and that is his real ceiling. This guy shooting 50% from the field can just get to the rim whenever he wants to. Is a physical specimen. Not yet at the level of Giannis, but if there was anything I could dream of that's a pipe dream, it would definitely be him actually fully realizing his talents because he's just got a physicality, mindset, a grind to really get after it on both sides of the ball, and it just shows. And so, yeah, it was very exciting and surprising to watch him. But I definitely want to hear your thoughts on Isaiah Stevens.
Man, I love a true point guard.
Mm-hmm.
I love a true point guard. They're a
So,
dying breed. There are not a lot of pass first point guards out there. And this dude is like from Kyle Lowry's rib. He was created in his image and
mhm.
he is so much fun to watch. He's 6'1, he's from Colorado State. He was undrafted and he wears a compression shirt under his jersey. And from the second I saw him make an in and out dribble, I was like, that is a ball handler. That is somebody that knows how to get the offense where it's supposed to be. He's not going to hijack it. He's probably not going to take more than 4 shots a game, but the offensive rating while he's on the court is going to be way better. And he's a good defender. Like he's smart, intelligent, competes. I don't have any worries about him on that end in like a bench role, but he's leading the summer league in assists, not with anything flashy, has a very low turnover rate, but just sees the game in a super advanced way. To me, right now, he's on an Exhibit 10 deal with the Heat. So they kind of have like basically a training camp invitation, is what that boils down to. To me, other than Kashad, who I think is locked in on that 2 way and will probably get turned into a guaranteed contract, I think Stevens is the number one priority to get on a 2 way for the Heat. I think he's shown that much. And I think, no offense to guys like Drew Smith, Zion Pullen, the kind of point guards they're trying to cycle through right now, I think Isaiah Stevens has the goods. He can knock down the three. He has at a really high clip. He can guard and he can set up offense. So those, dog days of the season, February, March, half the Heat roster's out. You need somebody that can dribble up the ball and get it to Bam in the post. Isaiah Stevens will happily do that for 37 minutes if you need him to. So what
Oh
have you
yeah.
seen from him?
No, all the same things, honestly. But you mentioned nothing flashy, and I gotta say, I saw some flashy passes out there. I mean, they weren't like behind the back elbow passes or anything crazy, but the pockets he was able to, and the way he was able to thread the needle on a
Yeah.
lot of the passes I saw out there, I was like, this is elite passing. Like, this is
Yeah.
not just being patient and making smart plays and passes. This is a hard pass to make, and I'm going to make it because I know
Mhm.
he's going to score. Like, it was really fun to watch, and it was funny because I'd missed the first few or I've missed a couple of these summer league games and had to go back and rewatch them, or only got a chance to watch the highlights because I didn't catch on that we weren't going to be able to record or watch any of these, and so I had to start recording them. But when you kept telling me that like Isaiah Stevens, like this, you gotta watch this guy. This guy's amazing. I was like, I'm not seeing anything like from this guy. Like he's not popping up in any of the highlights. And then I actually got to watch a game with him. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have a point guard. This is crazy. But it just goes to show like summer league is so fun because you're not necessarily looking for a guy to go out there and score 40. Like you're looking for role players that can fill in roles in, like you said, February, March, when you just need to throw a body in there for a week at a time and just hope that they can do their job. And this is just one of those guys to get excited about. So yeah, it was just awesome to watch him.
Yeah.
What did
Speaking
you
of
think of?
guys,
Oh, go ahead.
well, yeah, speaking of guys that can score 40, Josh Christopher had an explosion. I
Oh
believe it
my
was against
god,
Oklahoma City, but
yeah.
20 points in the fourth quarter. And just like the most beautiful array of 3 pointers just splashing in from everywhere. The commentators noted like not a lot of them crazy heat checks, but just was able to find good spots in the offense. Usually just they play drop in the pick and roll. And he's like, okay, I'm taking this pull up three until y'all change what you're doing. And he was just cashing over and over again, had some great drives. And then the next game, struggled. Jaquez was out after that. Jaime only played 2 games this summer league, so Christopher got bumped up towards the top of the scouting report and just couldn't get it going as much. And that's okay. He's a young guy. He was a first round draft pick by Houston, but he's still trying to kind of find where he's going to land in the league. And I still am very interested. I think how I kind of broke down the Heat notes is who like is the order of priority for 2 ways because there's 3 of them now. And I would give the third 2 way for the Heat to Josh Christopher, assuming he's eligible. I know after a certain amount of years you can't get it, but I'm pretty sure he's still eligible. So Jacob would be my pick for that just because the
Mhm.
shooting, scoring, and just, he was like one of the top recruits in his high school class. And I think it's some stuff you could clean up around the edges that the Heat program really could help him with, could really kind of emphasize the type of player he could be. So, what were you thinking when he was hitting like 7 threes in a row in the fourth quarter?
I was like, this is nuts. There was, oh man, he got a little cooked by the announcing team. They were so mad at him because after maybe the third one, he did it in the corner and
Yep.
against the OKC bench. He goes down the line trying to give them low fives, and nobody gives him a high five or anything. And the commentator gave him so much shit for that. They said,
They did
that
not like
right
that.
there, that's not good. That's not good. The Heat front office, the Heat coaching staff are not going to like that. That's, play your game, have a good game, but, don't get unsportsman with it. And they just wanted this thing. I was like, man. I don't know if there's anything you could tell me if I just cashed like
No
six
way.
threes in a quarter and
No
my
way.
career's on the line. But yeah, I liked it. I thought I wasn't too impressed by the hot shooting just because I felt like before that I didn't really notice him before that moment. And I don't know that he'll ever do that again. And again, you're right. He's like going into his third year, fourth year. He was drafted in 2021. But and so for like him to have a good game, like, yeah, it's kind of what you should do. You're technically like a 30-year player. But I was curious as to like where does that go when it comes to where does can Alondas Williams get another two-way contract, or is he already like where's his place in the roster right now?
So right now he is like unsigned. Any team could sign him to a two-way right now and take
Okay.
him. So the Heat could re-up on that. Alondas is somebody I don't have him in my notes, but I do feel like it's been a rough summer league for him.
Mhm.
I'm sure everyone listening has saw the dunk he had in the last
Yeah.
game, which was incredible. But yeah, it's just been up and down for him. I really like the idea of him, but to me, the Heat really prioritize archetypes with these two-way deals and honestly just with their talent pipeline in general. They're kind of looking for
Yeah.
like the Duncan Robinson, the Gabe Vincent, and the Caleb Martin. And to me, like I could see Josh Christopher, like Gabe Vincent. Some people don't know this. He was a scorer coming out of college. Like he was a gunner. And the Heat were like, when he was in South Dakota, like in Sioux Falls for the G League team, they're like, we don't want you to score. We really don't care how much you can score. We want to see if you can guard. And listening to Josh Christopher get interviewed after that game, they're like, how did it feel to go so crazy? And he's like, hey, listen, they just told me to guard. I'm just trying to get stops. Like, you could tell they are kind of trying to mold him in that same way,
Yeah.
because if you're a natural scorer, that'll always be there. And so to me, I think they like the idea of Alondas being someone like that. He can definitely
Mhm.
score the ball, but I haven't seen the same defensive intensity you would see from someone like Gabe or Caleb. And I just think the Heat aren't really going to use a two-way on a scorer. That's not
Yeah,
something they usually gravitate towards. So
for
I'll
sure.
be curious to see. To me, I think another team should check him out just because there's a ton of talent
Yeah. I
in
hope he
Vegas.
hope he gets a shot somewhere because he's a talented guy.
Mhm.
I just yeah, that's was my I was the same thinking. I was like, I just don't think it fits with us and what we're trying to do, especially with those specific roles. Especially, I just want to say we put together a crazy good summer league team. And it was
Yeah.
just in watching other summer league teams, like it's us and then the Grizzlies, and then like
Mhm.
nobody else. It's like everybody else
Yeah.
just kind of fielded a bunch of talent they wanted to see out there. I felt like those two teams between the Miami Heat and the Memphis Grizzlies went out and put out like the best offense and the best defensive teams you
Yeah.
could put together from scraps.
Yeah.
It was
And
interesting to watch happen.
And we'll see. Like the Heat historically do not care about summer league very much, other than like development. So they might shut down,
All those
everybody. And
guys. Yeah.
because I remember, to me, this is the best Heat summer league team since 2020, which was the Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn team. And that
Mhm.
team, I think, definitely would have won the summer league championship. And they played like two games in Vegas, and they're like, "You guys are good.
We
we've
saw
seen
what we
enough."
needed to see. Yeah.
Yeah, so I could definitely see that happening. But yeah, I think we should move on to Khalil though. Khalil Ware, the
Absolutely.
first round pick. I definitely want to get your thoughts on him, kind of what you've seen, what stood out to you from his game so far.
I liked what I saw. I think people were probably a little overexcited, but I feel like I'm the right level of excited. I saw the things I wanted to see as far as the 3-point shooting does look real. Like, even though he didn't make a ton of them, the ones he made and his shot form look very fluid. Like, it looks like a guy who should be shooting it. Sometimes you watch a 7-foot guy try to be a 3-point shooter, and it's like, you're not supposed to be doing that. But yeah, he looks really solid out there. I think some of the things that he needs to work on, I saw him improve game over game. The rebounding was one. I was like, you just have to be crashing the boards more than this. Next thing you know, he's got 11, 12 rebounds in a game. The screening, I was like, you're not even making contact in his like first game. And while it really just transitioned into, like you mentioned when we were texting, like it just kind of transitioned into him fouling a bunch
Hmm.
on moving screens, but that at least meant he was like trying to make an effort to make contact. And through that, I felt like he was learning a ton. And there was a lot of situations, or at least a couple, where he would screen and then rescreen and really peel a guy open whenever they were going under on some of our guards. And so I think he's going to be great. He is an immense and elite lob threat. I didn't realize he could actually get up there like that. I thought he was just tall, but like this guy you can put it in the rafters and he'll go get it. So that was
And
super exciting.
tremendous hands.
Hmm.
Like we talked about Reed Shepard's hands on defense. Kalel's hands on offense are incredible. Like we said, I love Isaiah Stevens. There's not a lot of high level passers other than him on this team. Pella Larson actually has been one of the better lob throwers, our second round pick we'll get to a little later. But I don't think I've seen Kalel bobble a pass yet. Like he just, and there's some kind of uncoordinated looking finishes. He'll have to add strength. He's getting bumped off his spot here and there, but he
Hmm.
gets his hands on the ball and then he's massive. Then he's either jamming it on you or he's got some nice soft touch. So I'm with you. I think, like you said, there's clearly coaching points that
Yeah.
the coaching staff is trying to emphasize with him, and he seems to be responding well. The rebounding uptick was great. I think he's being I'm already seeing, I think, progress in his
Hmm.
selective shot blocking. I think, like
Yes.
as Heat
And
fans
it's better.
know,
It came in better than I thought it would be. I
yeah,
thought he was going to be fouling a bunch and overextending a bunch. It still needs work, but it's better. That was one of my biggest things. Like this guy could just be another Precious Achua or
hmm
worse, a Hassan Whiteside, where he's just giving up a lot of weak side stuff
yes,
just from overcommitting to
yeah,
blocks. But this guy's there for every possession, and every shot attempt, and he gets vertical, and it's
hmm
really really impressive.
yeah, yeah. I think I feel like Heat fans are extra sensitive to what a weakness chasing like blocks can be, and
Hmm.
I'm sure the Heat staff is also very aware of that for that reason. And he already seems to be making a ton of progress and just realizing like he can force a ton of misses without ever
Hmm.
blocking a shot. Like he will impact the basket a lot just being there and being in good position. So, and yeah, the screening point is a great one. Every time he sets an illegal pick in summer league, I'm like, "Yep, you got
Yeah.
10 fouls, champ. You set them all you want.
Yes,
Like
that's
just
all you need,
you
brother.
make contact. Like you're tall and skinny. I get it's hard, but he's already doing some good stuff though. Like the Heat
Mhm.
coaching staff is so impressive to me. They have a lot of the assistants from the regular season staff on the bench. And you can tell he's doing that Bam thing. Other teams hate it. They say it's illegal, but Bam's just mastered it. But it's like you get in position for the screen and the guy's about like the defender's about to make contact with you and you just step out that extra 3 inches where they're
Yeah.
trying to curl around you, and the timing of it has to be precise because that's literally how you do a moving screen if you're not careful. But if you time it right, and he's experimenting with that, he's failing right now, but he's experimenting, and that's all
Yeah.
we want to
You could
see.
tell there's, like, machinations there in progress in that he's just and it's a guy that's working on stuff and a guy that really wants
Mhm.
to work, and that matters, especially when it comes to that Heat culture stuff, so,
Yep.
yeah, man. Really
Yeah, I think.
excited.
And now I do want to say to Heat fans, like I don't know how much he's going to play this year.
He's definitely
Like
not starter ready. That's
no,
not.
no. And y'all know Spo. Like y'all, I'm sure any Heat fans listening have been fans for a while. Spo will play probably Kevin Love and probably Thomas Bryant over him, at least for the start of the season. So just
Thomas
brace
Bryant's a
for
nice
that.
guy. Very
Nice,
pleasant man.
very nice, man. So just brace yourselves for that. It doesn't mean we won't see him. Guys will get hurt. Y'all have watched the Heat before. We'll have like 8 eligible bodies in March, but just be patient. He will get his burn. He'll probably dominate in Sioux Falls. There'll probably be some fun G League Khalil highlights, just like we had for Nico before he really got his chance and shined. I mean, you think about
Yeah, and I don't
Jovic.
think they'd send him down there just to, like because he wasn't good enough. I think they would only send him down there just so he could get burned. Like, they
Yeah,
would rather him down there working than just sitting at the end of the bench.
you get more
Um,
practices. Like there's almost
mhm,
no practices during the NBA season. Like it doesn't help for a rookie. I mean, it does to a degree, but just to sit on the bench, like let him get in shape, let him play. So if I get Heat fans are frustrated with like the front office and stuff, I think what you can trust the most about that organization right now, other than coaching, is drafting and player development. So
mhm.
if Spo's not playing them, I be chill. Like it will work out. If you can trust anything, trust Spo and that he has a plan because time and time again, it's really worked out. So very excited for Kalel. We'll finish up, I think, on Pella Larson, just because that's the Heat second round pick. And, we don't have to get deep into it, but I've liked what I've seen from Pella Larson. He was on the very first Summer League game. I was like, oh, yeah, just ball player. Definitely.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
this guy's probably like a coach's son or something. Like, he's
yeah.
just like,
He's definitely got that vibe to him. It's like, this guy, he has, like, a offensive TJ McConnell
Hmm.
feeling of like, yeah, this guy just knows the right thing to do in basketball situations.
Yep. Great feel, like sets good screens, makes the extra pass.
Mm,
To me, watching all of Pella's games so far, the only thing he hasn't done so far is put the ball in the basket effectively. And coming out
mm,
of school, that was what he was built to be. He was built to be a shooter. I looked up his finishing at the rim. I think it was above 65%. So, like, he seems to be an effective scorer at Arizona. Like, that's a Division 1 school, like in a tough conference. I think I'm actually speaking outside of my head. I don't even know what conference they're in. But it's a D1 school. I'm sure they're decent. So I think my hope is Pella, like that stuff will come, but the feel, the toughness, the little things. He almost very different kind of player, but like I believe it was Ben Taylor from Thinking Basketball calls Kyle Lowry the little thing king. And Pella definitely has that kind of vibe where it's just like he's never just standing in the corner. He's
yeah.
like, yeah, I'm supposed to do that on this play, but I'm just gonna go set this pick real quick. Or I'm just gonna go curl off the screen just to make sure they don't need me. Oh, I'm gonna cut. Oh, they doubled me. Here's a lob. Like he had some sweet passes to
Hmm.
Khalil Ware.
He's very
So
skilled. Like he is like a
yeah,
guy that didn't really. I think he also just didn't have a lot of usage in this. And summer
mhm,
league's tough, and that's you know not to bring up Bronny again, but environment scenario matters. And when you've got guys like in a certain way, you want to try to take command of your own life situation when it comes to like when you're on the floor in the summer league and you're trying to make a case for yourself. But at the same time, there's just so much you can do. And, clearly the book was drawn up for Isaiah Stevens, Jaime Jaquez Jr., these guys to really run the offense. And while I feel like Pelle Larson could really do that, I think his role in that lineup in that scheme was very off ball. And so I don't think it really showed off a lot of the skill set that he had. But I do think there's a better player in there than what we saw, or at least maybe a more interesting player than what's going to show up in the Summer League highlight film.
yeah, yeah. And he's just somebody you could tell will play off. Like the better players that are around him, the better he'll play.
Mhm.
Kate Martin in the WNBA is kind of like an interesting comp for him for me
That's actually
because
a really good comp. Oh my gosh. Yes.
right, she's just like if she the better the players are around her, the better she can amplify them. Like she's not trying
Mhm.
to do too much. She knows she's playing on a super talented roster, so she's just attacking closeouts, making the right kick pass. So a role like that for Pella would be awesome. And again, might not be the first year, but guys be okay when Alec Burks is playing over him in December. We will get Pella eventually, but Spo works in
Um,
mysterious ways.
yeah. And I think we kind of touched on Jaime Jaquez Jr., but also just want to say, what a guy. Like, we knew obviously if like this guy was helping Team USA get ready for the Olympics. Clearly, he's going to dominate here. But it's always just good to see it and see it with relative ease. Like he just looked
Yeah,
like he was out there running pickup with some children. He was like, "I'm fine. I'll fill in." He
yeah.
just
Jaime
put up a light
Jaime
30. Just
Yeah, Jaime dominated just in all facets of the game. He has changed his shot form. It's probably the part of this offseason, other than Bam's Olympic stuff, that I'm most excited about because it looks a lot smoother. And Jaime being like solid role player to like contributor to a contender, maybe a starter on a contender, is how efficient and how much volume he can have as a 3-point shooter. And he had a couple shots where he just one dribble off the pick, cash, running in transition, not a full sprint, but like pretty fast, catch, no dribble, anything, straight up into a shot, cash. Like his lower body mechanics look a lot more fluid. The Heat
mm,
have a great shooting coach in Rob Fodor, and they have Wayne Ellington, legendary Heat shooter. If they can get Jaime, I think he only ended up being like a 34% 3-point shooter his rookie year. If he can get above league average, if we're talking 38%, like he could be an incredibly valuable player. And if he can be that effective, he might be starting and closing big games for this team very soon. So yeah, totally impressed with Jaime. Lino, I didn't think we'd do it, but we've somehow gone over an hour. So that's how you know the Heat were involved because it
yeah.
wasn't a very long show sheet. But do you have anything basketball or otherwise you want to tell the people before we get out of here?
I'm trying to think if there's just any other players that they should keep an eye out for. I think Klingen, is that his name?
The
Something
center,
Klingen. Yeah, watch out for that guy. I saw flashes from him that I was like, this guy is actually really solid and
large man.
probably as good as they thought he would be. So that should
Yeah.
be interesting.
Bub
And
Carrington,
otherwise,
a
Bub
favorite of ours.
Carrington was a victim of wizard syndrome because he's one of my favorite draft prospects and he's doing very, very well in the summer league.
Hmm.
So much, but I completely forgot he existed because he plays for
Hmm.
the Wizards. I
Yeah.
even remembered again. I was like, I'm going to bring it up on the pod, and then forgotten again until you just said it now that he plays for the Wizards. And I'm afraid I'm going to get to the regular season, accidentally have to watch a Wizards game because the Heat are playing. I'm like, wait, is that Bub Carrington out there?
Yep. He's gonna cash 3 pull-ups in a row. Spo's gonna call a timeout, and then we'll be like, "Yep,
Oh
that's
yeah, that's a
Bub."
heat killer in the board in the making right there.
Was
So,
absolutely
but yeah,
right.
great summer league so far. Very interesting. I was given all the talk about how this draft class was not as interesting as the others. I was like, ah man, summer leagues must not be. It's not going to be as fun as it was just with the talent from last year. But nah, this has been awesome.
Yeah,
I love summer league time, man. I love the draft. So,
yeah.
yeah,
It is. It has been a ton of fun, and embrace it, people. There's obviously awesome basketball being played all the time, especially WNBA is actually, I was going to say, is at full throttle right now. They're about to take a break for the Olympics, but there's always good basketball going around. But as far as NBA basketball, this is our last little bit until the preseason. So make sure you're enjoying what these young guys are putting on display. And thank you for tuning in, because it's always fun for us to talk about it. When we make these show sheets in the off season, it's kind of like, well, yeah, Gary Trent Jr. went to the Bucks, and we'll talk about some summer league guys. But we're nerds about it over here. We love doing it. So anybody tuning in, we definitely appreciate you. As always, check out all our socials. We're on TikTok at Irrational Confidence Pod, on Twitter at Irrational NBA, YouTube at Irrational Confidence Pod. I feel like I'm forgetting one of ours, but anyway, look us up. Find us on all the
it'll
different
all be
social
on the
medias.
YouTube caption, and so yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It'll be
take a
there.
look.
So, and we should have Kalen back next week, assuming he recovers from his general soreness. And we'll probably be talking about some more fun USA basketball. The Gmail. If you guys have anything, this is what the off season's for. If you want us to rank our favorite basketball socks of all time, send us an email at confidenceirrational@gmail.com. We would love to hear from any and all of you. So let us know. And for myself, Micah, good friend Lino, we will see you guys next time.